Welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Before we get started, here's a quick look at what's lined up for you on the show tonight. Our cover story tonight is about the Sudan crisis. For days, the clashes between the country's army and the paramilitary force have been making headlines, and things have reached a point where the crisis is spiraling out of control. The result has been a race against time as countries try and evacuate their nationals now. Just how far have these missions gone? What are the challenges involved? What about the Indians stranded in Sudan? India's Operation Kaveri is underway in full swing. We tell you how the country is saving its citizens and get you updates from on the ground. We tell you what's happening there, the stories of long journeys and daring rescue missions that tell you about the magnitude and the impact of this crisis. Also on the show for you, we get you the story of Kenya's starvation cult. As the death toll rises, it is a shocking story that continues to dominate global headlines. We get you all the details. What is the link between conjunctivitis and COVID-19? Why is it a symptom of the disease in children? We tell you what the experts are saying. Would you go under the knife to increase your height? We tell you about this procedure that literally involves breaking your bones to grow a few inches taller. Is the Pacific exploding? We join the dots and look at the string of earthquakes and tsunami warnings that have been issued recently. It is a race to leave Sudan, to leave the country that has become the face of what the fight for power can do to a seemingly peaceful nation. Sudan is also an example of how little people affected by this power tussle between the powerful can really do. Some 46 million people live in Sudan. There are anywhere between 47,000 to 50,000 expats, and their home countries are now scrambling to get them out. Some countries have been successful, some not as much. Japan has evacuated 45 people, America some 100 people, most US government officials and their dependents. France has evacuated over 500 people. Germany has evacuated some 300 people, including German citizens and other nationalities. They were taken to the Ethiopian border on buses. The plan is to take them to the Ethiopian city of Gondar, and from there, they will be flown out. This evacuation, mind you, is no easy task. Let's just pull out a map for you. This is where Khartoum is located. It is the capital city of Sudan, and this is where the fighting is concentrated. Now, Sudan, like you can see, is surrounded by land on three sides. There is Egypt and Libya to the north, Chad and Central African Republic to the west, South Sudan and Ethiopia in the south, and there is Eritrea in the east. And next to it is the Red Sea. So how do you fly out those who are trapped in the fire fighting? Either you take them by road to another country like Ethiopia and then go to the nearest airport and fly your citizens out, or you take the sea route, which means get on a bus in Khartoum and drive towards the Red Sea. The distance, by the way, between Khartoum and Port Sudan is no cakewalk. It is over 840 kilometers. It takes over 13 hours by bus on a regular day, 840 kilometers. But currently, driving through the conflict zone can take up to 3 days. 3 days. Also, your journey does not end when you reach the port, of course. Instead, a fresh test of patience begins. There are thousands of other nationalities waiting there. Relief staff, people waiting for their turn to board a ship and sail to safety. This is the situation in Port Sudan as I speak. You see, evacuating people from conflict zones is a challenge as it is, but with a geography so unfavorable, the task becomes all the more uphill. In Khartoum, you have warring sides claiming control of critical infrastructure, firing relentlessly at the army, with no one in sight being spared, irrespective of his or her gender, political leanings, or nationality.
Everyone was under threat because there was no security. We were inside the hotel. They shot at our hotel and the buildings around. Stray bullets and cars that had been shot with people inside.
And by the way, diplomats also are not better off. The Swiss ambassador to Sudan was recently heard recounting his dangerous escape.
We could clearly see the RSF escorts with their pickup trucks and machine guns and mounted RPGs navigating through the areas they control. It gave us a good overview of what they currently control. All of a sudden, we got to the front line and the escorts disappeared where tanks of the regular army were parked. We passed them. All this was accompanied by attacks from the air, also by regular army with MiG-29s. Luckily, they did not shoot at us, but they focused on other targets.
An Egyptian embassy staff member was not all that lucky. He was shot dead in Khartoum. The spokesperson of the Egyptian Minister of Foreign Affairs spoke about the incident, adding that Egyptian diplomats' ethics, quote-unquote, require them to be the last to leave the area after ensuring that the evacuation operation is completed. So how many people are exactly still trapped in Sudan? Well, the answer is it's hard to say. It is estimated that some 2,000 people of 16 nationalities have been evacuated from Sudan so far. Some 3,000 Indians live and work in Sudan. Reports say over 270 of them have been evacuated so far. They departed from Port Sudan on board INS Sometha around 5 a.m. local time. The ship is Jeddah bound. It is a 12-hour-long journey, following which the ship will come back to Port Sudan for the next batch of the Indians. Meanwhile, INS Tig has also reached Port Sudan. India has launched Operation Kaveri to bring all its citizens living in Sudan. As per the latest update from India's Ministry of External Affairs, around 500 Indians have already reached Port Sudan. 2 Indian Air Force planes have been stationed in Jeddah, and not just any planes, but the C-130J Super Hercules. What's happening in Sudan has also become a test for leadership outside the country, and Britain's Rishi Sunak appears to be failing that test miserably. Reports say 71 NHS doctors remain trapped in Sudan. They have received no help and they claim to have lost all hope of being evacuated. NHS workers in Britain have been sharing stories of their colleagues trapped in Sudan. Front pages of British dailies are urging the Sudan government to get the NHS doctors out as soon as possible. People in Britain are pointing out that it was quick to evacuate its embassy staff, leaving behind its citizens. They say it is heartbreaking to see how other countries are prioritizing their people instead of those in positions of power. But you know what they say? A government is as good as its conduct during times of crisis. And what's happening in Sudan stands to have repercussions in the neighborhood and beyond. And from Sudan, we shift our focus to another country in chaos, Pakistan. The Swat Valley of Khyber Pakhtunkhwa has been rocked by 2 explosions. The blasts occurred at a counter-terrorism office. 16 people have been killed, more than 55 have been injured, buildings have collapsed. And what happened exactly? Well, it depends on who you ask. Pakistan police suspect the blasts were triggered by an electrical fault, that the weapons kept at the office caught fire due to a short circuit. It says there is no evidence of a terrorist attack so far. But let's not forget, it's Pakistan that we are talking about. And Swat Valley was long controlled by Tehreek-e-Taliban. It is the same place where Malala Yousafzai, remember, was shot. Look at this tweet by the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif. He explained the blast as a suicide attack, but soon clarified that the explosion is still being investigated. While some believe the short circuit theory, others are pointing fingers towards the TTP. It has been wreaking havoc across Pakistan. It was created by the ISI. Its purpose was to help the Afghan Taliban capture Kabul. And with that out of the way, the Tehreek-e-Taliban is on its next mission. What is that? It wants to take over Pakistan and turn it into a Talibani state. You see, Pakistan is dealing with a monster of its own making. The one it nurtured and sheltered for several years. It has come to bite it back. Hillary Clinton once bluntly said, "You cannot keep snakes in your backyard and expect them to only bite your neighbors." Eventually, those snakes are going to turn on whoever has them in the backyard. And that is coming true for Pakistan. Since 2007, the TTP has carried out hundreds of attacks and thousands of deaths have occurred. In 2021, the TTP warned Islamabad to brace itself for an offensive, and since last year, it has been executing it. In 2022, Pakistan was rocked by 376 terror attacks. This was the highest in the last 5 years. 533 people were killed, 832 were injured. Terror attacks increased by 28% since 2021. There were improvised explosion device ambushes, suicide attacks, raids on security posts. The TTP has been flexing its muscles over the last few months specifically. On the 17th of February, the Karachi police office building came under attack. 4 people, along with 3 terrorists, were killed. 19 others were injured. The biggest blow, however, came on the 30th of January. Clad in police uniform, a suicide bomber attacked a mosque in Peshawar. The mosque's roof collapsed on hundreds who were praying inside. At least 100 people lost their lives. More than 225 were injured. Between the 25th of December and the 26th, Balochistan witnessed as many as 18 terror attacks, 18 in 28 hours. Grenades were hurled at police stations and police posts. IEDs went off close to security forces. Gunfight was reported in some parts. At least 6 security personnel died. 17 were injured. And the TTP claimed responsibility for most of them. Earlier, mostly Pakistan-Afghan border regions came under attack, but the terror is slowly shifting to the country's heartland. On the 23rd of December, TTP terror shook Islamabad after a policeman, 4 security officials and 2 civilians were killed in a suicide blast. This blast took place in Islamabad's I-10 sector that borders Rawalpindi, the headquarters of the Pakistan Army. On the 18th of December, the TTP took a counter-terrorism center in Khyber's Bannu district. They held officers hostage for over 40 hours. Pakistan security forces finally sieged the center. They released all the hostages and killed 25 TTP terrorists inside. 3 officers were martyred. The TTP already controls vast parts of the territory in the northwest frontier of Pakistan, but it wants more. In January, Pakistani Taliban warned Pakistan's top leadership. It said if any action was taken against the group, the government will have to pay for it. And the TTP statement explicitly named the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, and the Foreign Minister, Bilawal Bhutto Zardari. You see, chickens have come home to roost. For years, Pakistan has been fueling terrorism, and today, countering it remains its biggest challenge. The government itself does not know what's going on in the country. Economic, social, political crises continuing to grip the country, as does terrorism. Let's now talk about what's happening in Kenya. A Christian cult is at the center of this story that is dominating headlines and has sent shock waves around the world. The government there is scrambling to impose regulations as the police discover at least 89 bodies from mass graves. Reports say the death toll could still rise as the Kenyan Red Cross says that over 112 people are still missing. What is the story here? What is the aim of this Christian cult? Well, the followers of Good News International Church have been living in secluded areas within Kenya's Shakahola forest. These followers believe that if they starve themselves to death, they will reach heaven before the end of the world. And this has led to the discovery of over 14 mass graves. Experts estimate that there could be up to 60 mass graves and that only a quarter of them have been found as of now. The police also found at least 29 survivors. But what's surprising here is that not all of them wanted to be saved. And what's the mystery there? Why do they not want to be rescued? Well, the survivors don't believe that they are victims. You see, they believe that starving and burying themselves alive is the only way to enter heaven. The rescuers say that when they tried to provide aid to these survivors, they refused and even called them enemies who are not letting them go to heaven. And who is leading this Christian cult? Paul Mackenzie, who is the head of the Good News International Church. He was arrested on the 14th of April after the police got a tip-off about the existence of these graves. And the police now has 14 days to carry out further investigations, while Mackenzie is kept in detention. Reports say Mackenzie is refusing food and water. Looks like the leader is following his teachings. So how has the government responded to this incident? The president, William Ruto, has called the cult leader someone who does not belong to any religion. Officials have also called the mass burials a massacre. People are shocked as a result of this terrifying event. Speaker of the Senate, Amason Kingi, has asked, how can such an evil of such a magnitude take place without anybody finding out about it? Another question that continues to dominate discussions is, why would someone starve themselves to death willingly? Well, this story goes way back, beyond the forest filled with the mass graves. You see, Kenya is a profoundly religious country. 85% of the population identifies as Christian. Experts say that there is a growth of a lot of small churches, which might pose a major problem for the country, especially if they are not properly regulated according to them. If Kenya sees a larger growth spurt of these churches, more leaders like Paul Mackenzie could be able to brainwash the people by acting as if they are solving the followers' problems. And Kenya, by the way, is not the only one with a dangerous cult. Let's just look back and talk about America's Guyana cult. This is one of the most horrific mass murder suicides in modern history. In the year 1978, 914 adults and children lost their lives because of a preacher who convinced them to carry out a revolutionary suicide, which resulted in those deaths. The parents were told to feed their children poison. Can you believe that? There's another cult-related massacre. This one's in Uganda. In the year 2000, 700 people burned themselves to death for what was called the Movement for the Restoration of the 10 Commandments of God. Followers were locked in a church while it was set on fire. And coming back to the US, Texas witnessed 76 people burning themselves to death as well. In 1993, followers of the Branch Davidian cult died in a wooden fortress while it was caught in a blaze. The cult was also accused of stockpiling weapons. The death toll in Kenya is reaching somewhere similar to the Texas cult incident. And we will be keeping a close eye on the latest developments. Let's now move on and talk about COVID-19. A new symptom is being talked about in India. Pink eye, also known as conjunctivitis. What is the link of this to COVID-19? It is being noticed among children and infants. Amid the recent spike in the COVID-19 cases, children aged below 1 year are at the highest risk as per reports. And this rise is driven by the subvariant of Omicron, XBB 1.16. And as per reports, conjunctivitis is the main symptom among children. What is conjunctivitis? It is a type of swelling that happens in the eyes and can be accompanied by pain and redness. A lot of times, it can lead to irritation and teary discharge. It is contagious in nature, which means it can spread from one person to another. Further, in some cases, it can also lead to light sensitivity, which is accompanied by puffy eyes. In fact, recent studies have confirmed that young infants are infected more than older children. What are the doctors saying? They advise vigilance towards pink eye as it is observed to be a defining factor in diagnosing COVID-19. While among adults, the symptoms include sinus and muscle pain, loss of appetite, fatigue also being noted to be common. The good part is that this can be managed symptomatically and goes away with treatment, for children in particular. Healthcare providers have advised the parents to wash their children's eyes with warm water. It is believed that this works both as a remedy, also as a preventive measure, to stop the virus from spreading further. And in teenagers, the major COVID-19 symptoms including body ache, weakness, fever, sore throat. While most of these symptoms are manageable and mimic flu, the total duration of these symptoms ranging from 1 to 3 days, expected to be mild in nature. Vigilant testing, being alert towards flu-like symptoms goes a long way in diagnosing and helping in stopping the spread of COVID-19. And apart from conjunctivitis, respiratory symptoms are also being observed. While adults and children both are impacted, these symptoms are predominantly being seen among infants. As per the medical authorities, There are 3 essentials when it comes to battling the current surge. First, wear a mask. Second, wash your hands at regular intervals. And third, vaccination, of course. And these are a must for children. Though COVID-19 cases are on the rise in India, effective measures are in place to contain the spread. More than 189,000 samples were tested in the last 24 hours alone, with roughly 63,000 active cases. India has been leaving no stone unturned in its fight against the Wuhan virus. So if your child complains of a red eye, or your teenager complains of body ache, or you experience body ache, do not ignore these symptoms or dismiss them as just being a case of feeling under the weather. Get yourself and those close to you tested. Moving on, India recently witnessed the arrest of pro-Khalistani separatist Amritpal Singh. He was nabbed after being on the run for a month, and his wife, Kirandeep Kaur, has been questioned, kept under police surveillance. What led to Amritpal's arrest? Did his wife's movements help in tracking down Amritpal Singh? What is the story of his wife? Our next report getting you the details.
If Amritpal Singh's life remains shrouded in mystery, we know that Singh was the head of Waris Punjab Day, an organization which aimed to mobilize farmers against the Indian government's agricultural reforms. Amritpal Singh's speeches were popular among the supporters of the separatist Khalistan movement. So how did Singh get arrested after being on the run for months? What led to his arrest? A part of the answer is his wife, Kirandeep Kaur. Reports say Kirandeep was the reason Singh chose not to flee India, as he thought that police would then arrest his wife. The fugitive chose to put his wife first and wanted her to safely get out of the country. This did not work out. As Kirandeep's attempt to board a flight to London failed, she was stopped by the airport authorities in Amritsar. Let's not forget that Kirandeep has been under constant surveillance. But why would Singh's wife try to fly to the UK? Well, it turns out that Kirandeep's family is based in the UK since 1951. The British citizen and her family visit India every 2 years. This was also beneficial for Amritpal Singh, as he routed funds for his operations through his wife and parked them in the UK. How did the two meet? Through Instagram. Reports say Kirandeep sent Amritpal an appreciation message and said that he was powerful in his approach towards his goal. And what did Amritpal say when asked about his priorities? Singh said that his religious goal would always come first and his wife will remain his second priority. Kirandeep justifies her marriage and says that Singh is a caring husband and that it was her choice to marry him. Since their marriage and Amritpal being on the run, Kirandeep has gone through questioning by authorities, along with Amritpal Singh's mother. In fact, in an interview before the arrest, Kirandeep said she will be satisfied if she simply knows where her husband is, even if he's in jail. She also said that she left everything just to be with him and that she will not leave the country without him. Well, Amritpal is now in jail after being arrested from Punjab's Moga. He's lodged in Assam's Dibrugarh jail and was interrogated by Intelligence Bureau officers on Tuesday.
A suspected car ramming attack took place in Jerusalem on the eve of Memorial Day in Israel. That is the commemoration of the country's fallen soldiers and terror victims. Our correspondent Jody Cohen getting you this special ground report. Take a look.
The ramming took place near the crowded Machane Yehuda market. 5 civilians were injured, including one elderly man in his 70s who is in serious condition. And today, a 28-year-old man was lightly wounded when shots were fired from a passing car. The news came as Israel began its Remembrance Day. Since records began, 24,213 soldiers have fallen during military service, including 59 in the past year, besides 86 veterans dying from complications of their injuries. According to the National Insurance Institute, a total of 4,255 civilians have been killed in what are considered anti-Israel terror attacks, including 31 in the last 12 months. On Tuesday morning, a 2-minute siren sounded ahead of ceremonies which are taking place under the shadow of protests against the judicial overhaul and debates on whether or not ministers and MPs should be allowed to make speeches. Some ministers who haven't served in the army cancelled their appearances at the request of bereaved families, and some bereaved families suggested they will stay at home to protest other ministerial appearances. Last year saw heckling of then Prime Minister Naftali Bennett on Memorial Day by bereaved relatives opposed to his government. This year, President Herzog, Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defence Minister Gallant and opposition leaders Lapid and Gantz all urged people to put aside differences for the day. I'm inside the military cemetery in Ra'anana, which had been singled out as a potential flashpoint, and there was a protest here with some people at the back singing the national anthem. Opposition MK Evgeny Sova and Mayor Chaim Broider, who were also present, responded, speaking exclusively to WION.
This day is a very special day for our country, for our nation, for the Israeli society. So I want in this day we have to put our arguments outside and just be together.
This is the memorial day that's important for us, for everyone, to look in the eyes of the family that lost their love, and I hope that all the time will Israel and all the people will be united. We don't have another country.
There were heckles at some other ceremonies too, although most appear to have gone off smoothly. Meanwhile, on Tuesday evening, Memorial Day gives way to the celebrations of Israel's 75th Independence Day. While the traditional torchlighting ceremony is held in Jerusalem, a huge party by the anti-judicial reform protest organisers is planned in Tel Aviv. This is Jodie Cohen for WION World is One.
It has been 3 years since the Wuhan virus triggered lockdowns. Businesses were struggling to survive. What are things looking like now? How are companies faring? And what about people's spending habits? Have you heard about the concept of revenge spending? Why is that being talked about now? Our next report telling you more.
If you have invested in cryptocurrency, we have some news for you. According to a report from Standard Chartered, Bitcoin could hit $100,000 by the end of 2024. It's believed that Bitcoin could gain from various factors, be it from the recent turmoil in the banking sector or from the improved profitability of crypto mining. Bitcoin hit the $30,000 mark in April for the first time in 10 months. Its gains represent a partial recovery after trillions of dollars were wiped from the crypto sector in 2022. But it's not just the cryptocurrency Bitcoin which is making gains. Here's what else is happening. LVMH, the parent company of Louis Vuitton, Hennessy, as well as brands including Givenchy, Bulgari and Sephora stores, has now become the first European company with a market value above $500 billion. The success of LVMH, which owns 75 luxury brands, is due to a growing demand from the wealthiest parts of the society. The Paris-based luxury retailer has been able to reach that milestone on robust first quarter sales in China and a stronger euro. LVMH shares hit a record high following the results. The company reported 17% rise in first quarter sales as compared to quarter 1, 2022, crossing $500 billion in market valuation only recently, in the process becoming the first European firm to cross the milestone. Powered by a surge in first quarter sales, the achievement comes less than 2 weeks after LVMH joined the ranks of world's 10 biggest companies, according to a Bloomberg report last week. LVMH is shifting its resources out of Hong Kong as it wants to focus more of its investment in burgeoning metropolises. For example, in Shanghai, Chengdu, Guangzhou and Shenzhen. Interestingly, the move taken by the luxury brand comes as China opens up its economy. According to Bain & Company, China's wealthiest consumers will continue to splurge on luxury items like designer bags and watches, even as middle-class shoppers refrain from buying big-ticket items, unnerved by worries about their job prospects and wages. The global consultancy said in its latest report on China's luxury market that the top 2% of Chinese spenders, accounting for more than 40% of spending on luxury items, will be a key driver of market growth in 2023. Last year, across China, lockdown measures and standstill orders to guard against the spread of COVID-19 prevented millions of consumers from buying long-coveted personal care products or leather shoes. But as shopping malls grappled with a decline in foot traffic, sales skewed towards very wealthy customers. Last year, spending on luxury goods in China is estimated to have hit $62.65 billion, down by 9.6% from 2021, owing to the more stringent pandemic curbs. Bain & Co. forecasts the consumption of luxury items this year will re-enter the positive territory, after Beijing was forced to shift from its stifling zero-COVID strategy after growing frustration and protests on the ground. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Now, I have a question for you. When was the last time you thought about or talked about something about yourself that you are not happy with? Something you'd like to change? Was it to do with your professional life, your personal life perhaps, your health, your eating habits, or the worst of them all, the way you look? You see, we live in rather strange times. Thanks to social media to a great extent, our aspirations have expanded. There are unnecessary standards that we are subjected to, that are imposed upon us, to quote-unquote look a certain way. The so-called perfect image. There are unhealthy ideals, aspirations. And I'm not here to give you a lecture about body positivity tonight. What I want to tell you about is the impact that such aspirations and standards are having on us, and the lengths to which people are going to try and change the way they look. Unimaginable lengths, or shall I say, heights. Here's what I'm talking about. Leg lengthening surgeries. You heard that right. And don't worry, I am going to explain what I'm talking about and break it down for you. People are opting for these limb lengthening surgeries to increase their height, to grow a few inches taller, because they don't like their height, because they feel short and want to be taller. It's a painful procedure, to say the least. Imagine this, literally breaking your bones to grow taller. The hours-long operation basically involves cutting the thigh bones in each leg and putting rods inside them. And then over the next few months, the length of these rods is increased by up to 1 millimeter, around 0.04 inches per day. And that's just one part of the story. Post the surgery, you have to undergo physical therapy, and then comes the final stage, when the rods are removed. Does that sound painful? well, your pocket will feel the pain as well. It is a costly affair. How costly? It can cost you lakhs of rupees, thousands of dollars. And just to give you a rough idea to which extent people are going for this, around $170,000, approximately 1.35 crore rupees. That's the amount that this man, for example, shed to gain a few inches and grow taller. Moses Gibson from Minnesota spent the amount on 2 leg lengthening surgeries to increase his height by 5 inches. Gibson said he was subjected to heightism and struggled to even find a girlfriend because of his height, he felt. Now, these procedures traditionally are reconstructive procedures. They have basically been used to rectify discrepancies in the length of the legs. But this painful surgery is now gaining popularity among the youth, those who want to increase their height and are not happy with how tall they are. There is actually a term for this. It's called short stature dysphoria. Simply put, a high level of dissatisfaction with one's height. Would you want to go under the knife to look taller? Tell us what you think about this. Shifting focus for now. A massive earthquake recently hit Indonesia, a magnitude of 7.3 on the Richter scale, at a depth of 84 kilometers. This earthquake has left a trail of aftershocks. Also a number of questions. It triggered a tsunami warning. And while an earthquake has recently struck Indonesia, it's not the only country, of course, in this part of the world to be impacted recently. Our next report taking a closer look at this region where 90% of our planet's earthquakes occur. Take a look.
What comes to your mind when I say ring of fire? A hula hoop? A circus jumping ring? Well, this is the Ring of Fire, a region located at the rim of the Pacific Ocean. It is approximately 24,900 miles in length, that is 40,000 kilometers, also referred as the Circum-Pacific Belt. The Ring of Fire is a path along the Pacific Ocean, characterized by active volcanoes and frequent earthquakes. The reason? The geographical location of this belt. The Ring of Fire includes the Pacific coasts of South America, North America, and Russia. It is home to Australia, New Zealand, the Philippines, to name a few. It is a tectonically active region, with a presence of more than 450 volcanoes. Among these are 40 active volcanoes in the Andes, nearly 300 in the Philippines, 70 in Indonesia, and 40 in Japan. This rounds about to 75% of Earth's volcanoes. 75%. Making it the most seismically and volcanically active zone in the world. In fact, this is the very reason why it is called the Ring of Fire. Situated on this belt, Indonesia's Sumatra Island was hit by an earthquake of magnitude 7.3. BMKG, Indonesia's semiological agency, has issued a warning that urged people to stay away from beaches because of a potential threat of a tsunami. It is believed that the impact of the tsunami will be far-reaching. While residents in Indonesia began brisk evacuations, trying to move to safer areas, the tsunami warning was lifted after 2 hours. Authorities say that the situation is under control. People are still under panic that they persistently live with, panic that has become a way of life. Have a look at these statistics. 21 earthquakes were felt in the South Pacific region, 15 around Pacific Marginal Sea, 50 in the Southwest Pacific regions. These are weekly numbers of these regions, numbers from just last week. So on an average, these parts of the world face a staggering number of earthquakes daily. Though their intensity and depths differ, these numbers are worrisome. Just imagine the risk of residing in this region with its geographical history and the seismic challenges as the Pacific witnesses tectonic collisions.
Let's now tell you what else made news around the world. Time for Gravitas Global Headlines.
One dead and several injured as Russian forces strike a museum in Ukraine's eastern city of Kupiansk. Police dug through rubble before finding a dead body of a woman that was taken away on a stretcher. EU designates 19 online platforms, including Instagram, TikTok and Twitter, for stricter regulatory rules for content. The platforms with more than 45 million users each will be subjected to annual audits and strict anti-disinformation guidelines. South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa says his ruling ANC party has resolved to quit the International Criminal Court. Last month, the ICC had issued an arrest warrant against Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is likely to attend the BRIC summit. US industrial conglomerate 3M to slash 6,000 jobs as it reported lower profits citing weak demand in consumer electronics. The company said cuts are to be implemented globally across its operations. Sweden's foreign ministry says 5 officials at the Russian embassy in Sweden are being asked to leave the country due to unspecified activities that are not compatible with the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi inaugurated the country's first water metro in the southern state of Kerala. It's a first-of-its-kind public boat service integrated with the metro rail network. Indigenous groups from across Brazil arrived in Brasilia to take part in this year's edition of the Free Land Camp. Hundreds marched through the streets of Brazil's capital, demanding land demarcation under the slogan "Indigenous future is today. Without demarcation, there is no democracy." Citizens in Haiti's Port-au-Prince lynched at least 12 suspected gang members as the group of armed bandits was traveling in a vehicle. The lynchings followed days of confrontations between gang members and security agents. Veteran batter Ajinkya Rahane has returned to the India side for the World Test Championship final against Australia. Rahane last played for the Test side in January 2022. KL Rahul also keeps his place in the squad, but the world's #1 T20I batter Surya Kumar Yadav misses out. LeBron James led the Los Angeles Lakers to a thrilling 117-111 overtime win against the Memphis Grizzlies. The 38-year-old became the oldest player in NBA history to reach 20 points and 20 rebounds in a single game as Lakers closed in on the Western Conference semifinals.
On that note, it's a wrap on this edition of Gravitas Tonight. We are leaving you with Gravitas images. Thanks very much for watching.
tells you stories which others won't. And tonight we will tell you about this new strategic map that is being drawn.
They say your enemy's enemy is your friend. Is that the foundation of the new defense bridge between India and America?
This is what separates us from others who claim to be telling you global stories that matter. In the last 3 days, WION has been traveling across